Around 6 months ago, my boss told me I needed to take a holiday. I had 14 weeks of banked up leave, but don't favour trips away considering I have no money, friends or social skills. Also, it turns out there's been a small global pandemic. So instead, I decided to take 7 weeks off, snuggle into bed for the frigid Australian winter and play a big fat JRPG. Trails of Cold Steel is a game all too often referred to as one of the best JRPGs of the last decade. However, I found it to be a trope-filled Persona wannabe with as much pace as a tortoise with 4 broken legs and a plot that goes absolutely nowhere. Yet here I am today, having spent the last month or 110 in-game hours playing the latest installment, Trails of Cold Steel 4, a game that serves as not only the 4th entry in the Cold Steel series, but the 9th chronological entry in the Trails or Kiseki series as a whole. In case you haven't already put the pieces together, I spent the remainder of my precious time off playing every Kiseki game. These can further be broken down into 3 sub-series: the Trails in the Sky trilogy, abbreviated as TITS, which is hilarious, the 2 Crossbell games, and the Cold Steel series. Yes, they're all text-heavy 60 to 100 hour JRPGs, and yes, I gained about 10 kilos on my holiday. My only reason to leave the house was for grocery shopping, and even that was starting to challenge the last molecule of my human dignity. What was once a relatively healthy diet turned into a kind of game to see how much crap food I could buy without the disinterested checkout girl blatantly implying I was some kind of subhuman. The fact that the Kiseki series has 9 games, basically all direct sequels dating back to 2004, is an achievement in and of itself. Such a momentous feat is perhaps the biggest appeal of the games to me. They give the vibe of a series of books, complete with deep world building and plot threads that can not only span across chapters, but entire games. Therein lies my dilemma. Given I've not made any videos on the prior entries, any whinging about Trails of Cold Steel 4 is akin to bitching about the last Harry Potter book without the context of the preceding installments. Realistically, however, I make these videos to get something off my chest rather than trying to deliver actual quality content. I mean, does the world really need yet another man-child's shit opinion on Japan's latest waifu catalogue dressed up as a video game? Much like our favourite young adults' fantasy novels, Trails of Cold Steel 4 sticks to an established formula. Thus, if you wanted to avoid my poorly written, nuanced opinions on the game, and I wouldn't blame you, a perfectly viable summary would be: if you liked the other Trails games, you'll like this one. This should come as no surprise to fans of the series. Kiseki games are consistent, if nothing else. So why should I even bother with this video? Fans of the series know what to expect, and for newcomers, some latte-sipping twat in California has probably written a perfectly functional summary for his hive mind Metacritic review. Perhaps, like me, you've grown to enjoy filling dead air with the constant droning of some insufferable YouTuber, not to be necessarily informed of anything, but rather to distract yourself from whatever your brain decides is a fitting reason for the constant crippling anxiety. The thing preventing me from recommending the Cold Steel games in particular is the story. While I would like to use a nice adjective like cringy, cheesy or melodramatic, I think the word that best describes the plot is just anime. As in anime, if the heroes are to do something as basic as going grocery shopping, they'll need several motivational speeches involving defying fate and their unwielding determination to get a box of cup noodles. Unsurprisingly, there's giant robots. Gundam toys are so prominent in these Japanese games, I've almost learned to filter them out, as I have with the ever-present Japanese comedy and its uncanny resemblance to softcore porn. The Cold Steel writers have a unique yet extremely unsatisfying strategy to hold back the inevitable anime power creep. They simply make the heroes lose every fight. When the heroes finally win a battle or two at the story's climax, of course the bad guys were merely playing 10-dimensional chess, and letting you win was part of their master plan all along. Power creep is usually a problem because it makes secondary characters irrelevant. However, in the case of Cold Steel, any attempt to negate it seems pointless. No one else in the story is relevant other than protagonist Rein Schwarzer anyway. I'm not really the biggest fan of Rein. After finishing Trails of Cold Steel 1 and 2, in fact, his character's flaws, or rather lack of them, irked me so much I let him live rent-free in my head for a good 3 weeks. I could easily make an entire video about everything he does that shits me, but given how often the one-dimensional twat gets handed the spotlight, I won't give him the privilege of my shitty rant. With Rein constantly sucking the air out of the room, only 3 or 4 of his companions have any relevance to the plot. Not that relevance would stop his classmates, aka Class 7, from being as stale as hot cross buns in July. Perhaps the supporting cast seems so boring due to the writer's ambition. There's simply too many characters. While the Sky and Crossbow games focus on a tight group of 4 or 5 main characters, albeit with a few stragglers, Class 7 alone has 11 high school anime tropes all moulded into some sloppy humanoid figures fighting for a certain someone's crumbs. With Trails of Cold Steel 4 being a kind of soft ending for the series, we get a lot of returning characters from the older games. The old hero cameos, however, nothing more than fan service, and like everyone else, they never really nailed the great katana-wielding isekai protagonist. Our dude is so edgy and cool, his last name translates to black in German, and his Giga Chad pheromones have every vagina within a 50-kilometer radius gushing. He is, expectedly, totally oblivious because anime, though to be fair, he's probably too busy planning his next cheesy heroic speech to notice the harem. The Cold Steel games introduce a very Persona-esque dating sim thing to the series, which not only slams the brakes on the pace of the story, but the necessary blank slate nature of the romance in a dating sim makes said romance lack chemistry and believability, though Reen's total infatuation with BL bait Crow Armbrust doesn't help. Given I'm typing this very script out on a giant Sakura Miko mousepad, I'd say that anime-ness isn't too much of an issue for me. Dude, the game is so tacky at times it crosses over into so bad it's good territory. Honestly, for half the sad dramatic scenes I'd break out into laughter. Something I can't be so forgiving of, however, is the pacing. Cold Steel 4 has all the correct pillars in terms of structure, but it's the filler between that really makes the game a slog. There's the bullshit free time sections where all the girls confess their love to a disinterested Reen, the excessive number of basic kill the monster or fetch quests, the surprisingly enjoyable Vantage Masters card game and its not so fun cousin Pom Pom Party. Additionally, unless you're one of those sick in the head who talks to every boring NPC in the game for the updated dialogue whenever the story progresses an inch, yes, some people actually do this, you'll want to use a guide for the game because some 10,000 IQ prick on the development team had the bright idea to add a ton of easily missable hidden quests and items. I should add that all this cadaddling is optional, although in the same vein that mustard and sauce are optional additions to a hot dog. Once the player completes what feels like a glorified list of chores, they're rewarded with the next dungeon. The dungeon's boss is generally a villain with some convoluted relevance to the story, and once defeated will reveal that they were holding back during the fight, only to destroy your entire party with a single hit and flee. But not before dropping some minuscule hints about the plot, which seems to have taken a small vacation itself by this point. We then roll back around to another free time section, and the cycle repeats again and again until we eventually hit one of those elusive plot pillars I was talking about earlier. I mentioned earlier that the dungeons feel like a reward for tolerating the slice of life Persona free time bollocks. That's because the combat in these games is just raw, unfiltered, stick it straight into my veins fun. The gameplay is not exactly challenging and it's super easy to exploit, but therein lies the appeal. I like to think a good strategy game is about making you feel like a genius, and that's exactly what Cold Steel does. When the final boss can barely get a hit in because I've set up my magic caster to have such a short recovery that she can cast the most powerful spells in the game 10 times over between one of the enemy's turns, my inflated ego and delusion of intelligence grow to such dangerous levels I could be mistaken for the average Reddit user. Spamming magic is just the icing on the proverbial cheesecake. At least it's between that and the Dodge Tank's Platinum Shield's Chrono Burst, a move so broken I refuse to use it, and Emblem S-Craft spam. One could say it's a perfectly balanced game with no exploits. My love for the Trails series is that of a dysfunctional relationship. You know, the couple that are constantly fighting and bickering yet perfectly complement each other's flaws so well they couldn't live without one another. Despite my seemingly endless list of annoyances, whenever a new Kaseki game comes out, for me it's a must-buy. While I would like to say the pros outweigh the cons, considering I said about 2 good things in this video and still feel as if I haven't even scratched the surface of the series' flaws, I can't say that's the case. Said cons, in their defense, managed to reach a Star Wars prequel-esque level of spine-tingling cringe, and in my opinion are far more entertaining and memorable than only slightly below par writing. The pros, too, are unique. I enjoyed the battle system in a strange power fantasy kind of way. The resurrection of long-forgotten unresolved plot points from several games ago is always a surprise, and despite Reen in Class 7 seeming straight out of some shitty soulless anime and the returning characters being nothing more than member me fan service, there are a lot of characters that I legitimately enjoyed and invested in. Having said that, the writers had better kill off some of the stupidly large cast in the upcoming soft reboot, or else I'm gonna whinge about it on the internet. In summary, the Cold Steel games are poorly paced, blow bloated stories stuffed with annoying anime cliches and characters, a plot that requires some serious leaps in logic, graphics that always seem 2 generations behind, and some fucking top tier A grade so good you'll momentarily forget that you're destined to be single forever. Waifus.